Well, I think we can get started. Let me just quickly bring up the meeting agenda. So, welcome everyone. Start by acknowledging the traditional owners on whose land we're meeting, pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. We've got a full agenda today with lots of interesting presentations from network members. So first of all, we'll be hearing from Donald at Indigo Power about the Community Energy Hub promotion. We're going to hear from John Thompson and Jeff Wilmont. From Mitchell, we'll hear from Dennis Lambert from Sustainable Upper Ovens, Rob Caroline from the Foundation, Peter Anfrans from Totally Renewable Beechworth, and Jeff from Renewable Avenel Energy, and Jim Billings is a late apology. And then we've got from Monash University, the Net Zero team, who have been doing a lot of work around the outskirts or very outer reaches of Melbourne, and they're going to present about some of their work. And I'll just admit a few more people to the meeting and hand over to you, Donald.
Hi everyone, welcome today. So I'm pretty excited to be here for the first time to the Community Energy Network group, and it's also great to see some faces to some names, so I'm pretty excited. So I've just been, a quick introduction, I've just been with Indigo Power for about 3 months now, and my role is the General Manager of Electricity Retail. So the short version of that is my role is to grow our customer base in the retail space. And one of the key pillars that I've identified through working with the team and through discussions with others is that the community energy groups are absolutely key to that growth. You know, you guys are doing fantastic work around engaging with the community, making real changes towards renewable strategies and programs. So I'm pretty excited to be working with you guys on the piece of work that I'm currently doing as well. So I've just got about a couple of minutes just to talk a little bit about the exciting program that we're working on at the moment. And if there's any brief questions, then I'll be able to answer those as well. So you would have seen from me an email or had a conversation with me on the 1st of March. I sent an email about the campaign that we're running. And if you haven't received that, then make sure you give me a call or an email to get more information about the program. So the program is called Powered by the Community. So we're pretty excited about one of the promises that we made when Indigo was formed was to, at one stage, once we hit 1,000 customers, we wanted to reward those community energy groups with a $10,000 cash prize. So now's that time. And so we've launched the campaign called Powered by the Community to enable that to happen. So we've been fortunate enough to have that cash, but also fortunate enough to have some additional support from Mondo with the UBIs and giving those to the new 10 new customers, as well as internally we're going to help the third prize with $1,000 of marketing support for the best growing hub and some of the potentially some of the best campaigns that people are working on. So the objective of this program obviously is to grow our retail customer base, whether that's residential or small to medium-sized businesses. It's both are in scope, within the scope of the AusNet and the Essential Energies catchments areas, which you're all part of as well. So it's going to run from the 1st of March through to the end of June. and then we'll do the wrap up and the prize giving after that as well. So on the 1st of March, I sent through a document that explains some further details around the terms and conditions. And also attached to that are some marketing collateral to get you going. So within a Dropbox, there's a whole bunch of information that you'll be able to see that are generic flyers, as well as email templates, website banners to help you along the way. But also, I guess what I've done is put together, I guess, a brief examples of some of the things you might think that you might be able to do within your catchment area. So some of the basics are obviously to reach out to your members in your groups. That's kind of probably a pretty easy win, making sure that people are aware of Indigo Power, but also aware of what the campaign is, and the opportunity for your hub to be able to win $10,000. And then it starts getting a little bit more exciting around some different initiatives that you may think of. So that could be conducting, you might have an event that's already planned around renewables or within your community, and then tacking this on to as part of that, either through a stall that promotes Indigo Power or a guest speaker or other things that you can think of. There's a whole bunch of other areas you could do around letter drops, approaching businesses, reaching out to other community groups as well to get them on board. And you know, one of the key things that I'll be able to do is assist you with any other additional things that you might require. So it's really up to you guys to think about how you approach that. And some people will want to do a whole big program, and some maybe a light program. But I'm happy to support everybody around, you know, what's right for them, given the stage of your group, as well as the effort and the abilities and time that you may have as well. So the next step will be, as part of it would be a reach out from me. So I'm intending to give you a call all next week, just to see if you've received all the information, you understand it, how can I help, what are the additional things you might need from our perspective, and then maybe give you some advice on how to approach particular things. So, for example, tonight I'm speaking at CEN Meeting, which I'm excited to do as well. So there's also those offers around, you know, my time and the team's time to help with this program as well. Is there any particular questions on that?
Probably a few questions I have, but probably leave it for when you and I are talking separate, Donald. I have a few more to follow up from our previous emails. But
fantastic.
Actually, just a couple of questions that I would have, but they refer to something we haven't talked about so far, and it may not be the right forum, the Project Edge.
Yeah, I think that's probably a separate item.
Correct, but we need to have a forum sometime about that, and I have spoken to Brady Gibson about that. We just need those of us who've been involved. I would think other people, in fact, I know from Brady speaking to us that speaking to me, that there are other people who have asked the same questions. We just need to know how it's working, what's happening, and when stuff does happen, you know, what they're doing, that sort of stuff. And there are quite a few questions which I'd like answered, and I so far haven't had answers. So I'd look forward to that.
Is that, Keith, that might be an action to try and get Mondo at the next Community Energy Network meeting for an update on Project Edge? Would that be useful?
You're on mute, Keith, sorry.
Would definitely be useful. You know, the earlier the better.
Yeah.
Brody talked to me about possibly a town hall event. But and that's fine too, but it needs to, since the project ends, I believe, at the end of March, those of us who are involved, I'm quite sure others would have similar questions to mine, and I'm surprised that, you know, there aren't more people here who probably are involved in it, might have similar questions. However, yep.
Great. Okay, we'll try and make that happen for the next the next meeting or an ad hoc meeting. Yeah, I'll take that as an action, Keith. So question from Claire around the benefits to customers.
Yep. So I guess in that document, we talk about some of the things that Indigo Power are all about. And that also is part of our flyers as well, to say, okay, what makes Indigo Power different? I guess our purpose is to enable a society that is 100% renewable in a way that supports and empowers communities. So for us as Indigo Power, we're a community-owned organisation that's a social enterprise that gives back to organisations. We have the ability through our technology to share our energy across our group and our hubs. We're very obviously renewable focused, and that's probably the key thing. We're from a retail perspective, honest pricing. We're not trying to hide things when it comes to compared to some of our bigger competitors as well. One of the great things that we're also working on which is probably for another forum, is we're working through what the blueprint we think success looks like for a community energy group, and having a local community retailer is one of those key components to that.
Thanks, Donald. Any other questions for Donald before we move on?
I think if I could just throw one at you, Donald, just to elaborate a bit further on that last question. Convincing, when we're early in this stage, which we are, we've got to convince our participants within the community that this is a good move. Having a locally represented retailer as a statement makes sense, but when you dig down into it, what does that mean? How do we sell that to the current people within the community? Is there an edge that we need to focus on?
Probably the couple of the edges are around our renewable focus compared to a lot of our competitors. And I guess one big differentiating factor is that we share our energy amongst our network. So if you don't have solar, that's okay. We've got plenty to share. So there are a couple of key selling points.
Yeah, I think for this forum in particular, Indigo Power came out of work that was happening in Yakandanda about more renewables in a community, and identifying that a retail functionality was necessary. So it's not the end in itself, it's the means to an end, which is how do we work within each of our communities to take that community to more renewable energy. And to do that, we need an electricity provider. And so that's really the benefits then come from that, is we've set up this energy sharing to be able to track renewable energy across a given community. So that's a big thing. The other thing to say is, well, that'll be our dashboard. We can see how much renewable energy is there. Then we can start to do things together, and that might be the community wants to connect a community battery, or the community wants to connect an EV public EV charger, and they want to see renewable energy being shared from solar customers to that EV charger, to that battery. These types of things. So that's for this forum. The real promise, I guess, is working with this retail offer to increase the amount of renewable energy in a community. And then our experience, I just go to your point, I think, Claire, about price. And the important thing to say about price is everyone's on the same plan. And that means we don't have a bottom of the drawer plan to win new customers and a real stinker that once you've had your first year of the good plan, you go on to the bad rates and we make our money back, sort of thing. Everyone's on the same plan. Everyone gets the same prices no matter what. So that's that means a few things. One, it means if you're on the stinking plan that someone else is providing you, our plan will be better. If you're on the market offer that's trying to win new customers for a different retail provider, then you may be on a better plan, or you may be able to get a better plan by ringing around and driving a hard bargain. Because we don't do that. We don't give someone a cheaper rate because we want to win them as a customer. So what we tend to find is it just depends whether people are on the if people want a trusted provider that they know they're going to get the best price that they can offer, and they don't want to shop around once a year, then we're a good electricity provider. If they prefer once a year to pick up the phones and work the retail list, then undoubtedly they'll find a better offer. And there's not really much we can do about that unless we want to start cutting the same deals to win customers. So it's a bit of a principle we take. Yeah.
And what we're looking at is selling that vision, and we just need the tools to help sell that vision or understand your vision better, so we can translate that better to our community. That's all I'm trying to understand. Okay.
I think that's true. I think that's true, Danny. And I think the other thing about that is that as soon as there is a concrete win in terms of community energy because of what Indigo Power is doing, that needs to be really pushed very strongly, because those are the sorts of things also that'll get people on board, that'll allow us to push it and get people on board. Yeah. Thanks for that.
So I think this is referring, and that's something we recognise, and this blueprint that Donald's sort of working hard on at the moment will be something that exactly outlines that the blueprint, the vision, for how do we do this well together. Dennis, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Ben, I just wanted to jump in on 2 points that you've just mentioned there, and one of those is really the equity issue. And it was one of the things when I came down from New South Wales, I was with another energy supplier. And every year I, like most of us who would be on this, would pick up our phone, and I didn't change, but I asked them if they could do better. And they told me I was on a 30% discount because I paid on time. And then they said, I don't think we can do any better. And then they came back and said, we made it 38%. I hang up and I joined Indigo Power the same day. Now, why did I do that? Because I know the people I'm looking at, we're the 20% who will go and chase a price. 80% of the population are too scared to do it. And as Ben said, once you flow over that first year, then they just get taken for a ride. And when I was in New South Wales and I was paying 25 cents, there were people who were paying 52 cents a kilowatt hour because they were not prepared to chase it. Too scared to pick up the phone and don't have that confidence. And I just think social equity is just so important. The other thing I would say is that last year, Indigo Power had a deal on reducing for business customers to get $100 off. I went round and spoke to a lot of the businesses in Bright. And one of the things that really got them is if they're keeping money in our community. So when we're sharing power, we're keeping money in our community. Now, I'm not quite sure what the number is for Bright. I think it's about $6 million we send down that power line every year. If we can start to keep that money in the community, in each of our small communities, these are very, very valuable dollars. And I tell you what, the business people understand it well. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, Dennis. So we might have to keep moving. Any last comments?
No, so my email is donald@indigopower.com.au. So reach out to me, but I'll be reaching out to you all next week just to further go into some more detail on this. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Donald. So moving on to you, John and Jeff, we've got some information about the solar farm proposal and Mitchell Council's sustainability planning process. So happy to throw to you first, John.
Okay, it's Anne's phone, Anne's laptop I'm using. And my first question is, how the hell do I get the camera to work on it? But I'm having difficulty with a Lenovo laptop that I don't know anything about.
That's all right. We can hear you fine. So
Yes.
happy for you to
Okay.
get going. And I've got some documents here, I think, as
Yes,
well.
please. Yes. We, Mitchell Community Energy has been working with the Mitchell Shire on the establishment of a solar farm on an unused rubbish tip very close to the town. If you were able to put slide A on it.
Give me a sec. I'm just working this out now. Share screen.
While he's doing that, the land concerned, it's the one, it's not that one, it was A, that's it there. And can it be raised a bit? There we are, that's it, that's good, thank you. No, out a bit, there it is there. This is on the outskirts of Seymour, and it used to be an old army area before Puckapunyal was established. And the area there, which has Seymour Transfer Station and landfill, is part of that. You can see where the town is. It's just on the outskirts of town. On the power lines are shown there as the 22 K power lines, and it runs right across the site. And power lines go to a zone station, zone centre, where the eye is there, and then distributed throughout there. So it's only about, first of all, the power lines are readily accessible, and the distance to the zone station is about 1.5 kilometres. So it's an ideal location for it. The tip has an area of, the tip has operated until about 7 years ago, and it has been very recently rehabilitated. And if I can go to the slide B, please. And that's
Is that the one?
No, B. That's it there, but it needs to be expanded out. There, okay. Drop it, compress it a bit. Yep, that'll do. The adjoining property to the, well, above that is part of Lighthorse, the Australian Lighthorse Memorial Park. And the big hole in it was a borrow pit, which is now a lake or a small watercourse there. The area of the rehabilitated tip is about 6 hectares. And it is, you can see the condition that was taken during, that was a drone shot taken during the rehabilitation process. There's not much else you can do with the site as a result of the rehabilitation process. But we now have that 6 hectare site, which is, first of all, not able to be viewed because of the trees that you can see around it from the park. And there's only rural lots on the other side of the Hume and Oval Road. So we have been proposing this as we have had informal discussions with AusNet, who have an interest in it. We have had very productive conversations with Mitchell Shire Council, and we are now at the stage of, the Mitchell Shire Council is now at the stage, after we have worked with them on a expression of interest for a thorough business case of that particular site. If I can just go to the last slide, please. Now, just up the road from that, and now we're in town of Seymour, is a place called Chittick Park. And that is the park that you're looking at there, with two big ovals, a tennis centre in the north, a sports and aquatic centre, and a very large car park, 220 cars, car park. We have also been working with the Shire on this, and this complements the rubbish tip proposal, because this is about half a kilometre from the zone station. But we have previously worked with the Shire on the solar panels on the roof of the Seymour Sports and Aquatic Centre, and heat pumps to replace the gas heating of the pool. And we also have been pressing, not successfully so far, but we are continuing to press for a solar covered car park there. You'll see that there is very little vegetation around. It's a very hot and inclement place in the summertime, and so we see that as being a useful way of providing power and shelter to that car park. The centre, I might add, is also a refuge for bushfires, and recently, very recently, the floods in Seymour. And the Sports and Aquatic Centre, which is quite problematic, I suppose, that you use an aquatic centre as a refuge for flood victims, but but there we are. Yeah, so that's the other element of our work there. Now, Jeff is the expert on the potential of the site, and I'll pass over to Jeff.
Yep, over to you, Jeff.
Hello. Just in passing, the first installation at the Aquatic Centre, the 100 kilowatt system, was just at the beginning of this year, paid for itself after 3.5 years. The savings it's had made over that time has now paid for the installation. That only supplies about a third of the centre's demand. So our proposal was to augment that installation so that it supplied the whole of the demand. Unfortunately, there's no room on the roof for it, so we've proposed that it should go and create a car park. Create solar panels, carport arrangement over the car park, and install the panels on that. And that would just to supply the extra for the aquatic centre, the extra 2/3 of the demand would cover about 100 car spots. Now, by replacing gas by heat pumps, would add another 140 kilowatts, which would probably about another 40 car spots. The council has one of the problems with getting progress on this is that the council is proposing to create a master plan for Chittick Park, and this would get absorbed in that. And they're at the moment now going out to find a consultant who would create the master plan for them. In spite of this, has been going on for about 4 years, and it's had a number of public consultations and inputs to it so far, but they've now decided to go out and find somebody else who can, an expert organisation that can do the job for them. And hopefully out of that, we'll get some progress on that particular project. The heat pump one, the council's now going out for quotations for design of the installation, all the work that's required to make changeover from gas to heat pumps.
Mm.
Now, the council is also having decided to join in the movement to declare climate change an emergency, are now proposing to set up a climate emergency action plan. And to do that, they've set up a reference group of about 12 local people, including, and we've joined in on that, of course. It's being run by Ironbark Sustainability, which is an offshoot of Beyond Zero Emissions. And we've so far had about 4 meetings. The reference group has had 4 meetings and a couple of public workshops. And out of that, the Ironbark is going away to create some sort of an action plan, and we'll come back to the reference group probably in about June. So some progress being made in the area. Unfortunately, it's been very slow, but I'm confident we'll get there one day.
Right. Well, thank you, Jeff and John. I might, because we're a little bit behind, maybe save your questions and we'll get to them if we've got time at the end of this community update session. So I might quickly throw to you, Dennis, for a quick update from Sustainable Upper Ovens.
I'll keep it quick for you so you can catch up some time. Look, the mug library that we have at our local market every month is just an amazing success and an amazing promotion for our group in all aspects of it. And it's saving somewhere between 150 and 200 mugs every market. So this is stopping takeaway mugs going to landfill that would be picked up. And Sixpence Coffee, who's the coffee vendor, asks the staff ask every person who comes to there, do you want a porcelain mug or do you want to take away mug? So the porcelain mug comes back to our store and the mugs are washed. They were up until now washed up at the brewery, but the Indigo Shire's dish pig has now changed hands over to the Alpine Shire. They only got it last week. And if it's not at this market this weekend, it'll be in future markets where that will be there to do the washing, which will make it handy. On April the 30th, we've got a home energy efficiency program going. It'll be in the afternoon for 1 to 4, from about 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and it's actually on the back of the work that Peter's doing at Beechworth, which he'll be talking about shortly. So we've got Lucinda Flynn talking about energy efficiency. We're partnering with the Alpine Shire, who have put home energy testing kits in all their libraries. So they'll be going out after this event. And the Alpine Shire will also be talking about a study that they have commissioned Indigo Power to do, looking at batteries and EV charging on all of their buildings. So they're getting an audit of that done at the moment. Nick Mason-Smith will also be talking about the aggregated community battery study, which we're involved in, and the Alpine Shire is an active participant in that, and that's going very well. And the next thing we'll be talking about on the day is we're going to have a session on this $10,000 that we've got in. We got 4 lots of $10,000 to put solar and heat pump on low energy housing. And we've just had a meeting this morning with Bendigo Bank to see if they can help facilitate that, because we start to run into, if we want to give them a low interest loan, repaid back out of savings. So we share the savings with the household. About $1,000 each will be the savings over 10 years. To do that, we could run into breach of the Credit Act. Now, so we're talking with Bendigo Bank, and hopefully we'll have that solved. And once we've got all these things, all these boxes ticked, if we want to take this program further, then you'll be able to share, use the information that we've got. We're hoping that with the $10,000, we're going to put very close to a 6 kilowatt system on people's homes, plus a heat pump, the CO2 heat pump. So it's about $15,000 worth of gear. But when you take out the STCs and the state government subsidies, that saves you $5,000. And as I said, there'll be no upfront cost to the householder. This is the big thing that's different. When you see people who can't afford to even put $1 in towards starting a program, that's the key to us. So hopefully we're going to get that up and running. And the other one that I'm working on, I'm just going to mention this very briefly to you, is a proposal to look at how we do this across the whole of our network. How do we go and get the funding to enable all of us to go out and look for low income households and put solar and heat pump on to the value of about $10,000 in our area. But the second one we're looking at, which has come out of Nick's study, is can we do this with batteries? If you've got solar, could we offer you a battery, no cost up front? And you pay $15 a week, and it's joined to a VPP, and that'll pay the other $15 a week, and you'll get your battery after about 10 years. Anyway, we're working away at these, and hopefully we'll have more information for you for that one next meeting, if not before.
Fantastic, Dennis. Lots happening.
Can I quickly interrupt? Sorry, guys.
Yeah, go, Danny.
I'm travelling and my battery's about to go flat, so you're going to lose me. Apologise. It's not for any other reason. I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks, everyone.
Good. Thanks,
Bye,
Danny.
See ya.
All right, Keith, you've got a question?
Yes, actually, it is a question. Dennis, we've had you on our program before, our Pale Blue Dot program on Alpine FM. I'd be very much keen on getting you on again. We're on Wednesday afternoons. I know this is basically just Alpine Shire, although we do get quite a bit outside the Alpine Shire with our actual reach, and of course we're online. But 3 o'clock on Wednesdays, if I can get you to do a semi-regular spot, particularly with what's going on there now, that would be terrific. And I think anybody else who's doing stuff like that would be really, exciting stuff like that. That's the way we'll raise the awareness of the community, by making sure that as many opportunities as we can to publicise stuff that's happening and to make sure people know about it. So, Dennis, if you want to, I will give you a call later on and we'll put you on.
No worries at all, mate. Bye.
Yeah. Good one. Okay, over to you, Rob, for an update on the Indigo Power Foundation.
G'day everyone, and great to we're at a very exciting stage with Indigo Power Foundation because we're in the middle of recruitment of an executive officer. Applications closed on Tuesday night. Hopefully, we will be able to select an executive officer out of that process, which you'll find out in the fullness of time. That person will be a significant resource, I believe, to you as community energy groups out there. Listening to Jeff and John talking about their plans, Dennis I've spoken to over the phone about their plans. The great advantage of a foundation which has DGR status, as it's called, deductible gift recipient status, is we get access to philanthropic money that can take a little bit more risk than government grants and council money and others, and can really do some of the early development work in projects and getting them up to the point where you can actually have projects much closer to shovel ready or ready to do business cases, much more specific business cases. Listening to John and Jeff and all the wrestling that you've been doing with those projects, just using that as an example, that's it. To me, I see that as a project which identifies community assets, starts to identify community benefits. And for us, one of the things that's really vital is that we maximise the economic benefit to communities out of this energy transition that's happening. And that's a great example of that happening, not just economic benefit, but you end up with a roofed shaded car park at a bushfire refuge. That's actually an enormous community benefit. And we've got to be able to quantify those sorts of things and actually build them into business cases of projects. So the news from us is that hopefully we'll have an executive officer on the ground in the foreseeable future. And we're keen to hear from you about the ideas you guys have got.
Great, thanks, Rob. Good to get an update from you. So over to Peter Anfrans for the Home Energy Efficiency Expo announcement.
Hi everybody, I'm doing this on my phone. I've never done it before, so I hope it works okay. And I'm in Alexandra sitting in their sound shell, so trying to block out a bit of noise. Yeah, so Total Renewable Beechworth is putting on an event on the 29th of April called the Home Energy Efficiency Expo. Dennis mentioned that before. They're doing it in Bright. So yeah, we've got Lucinda Flynn from Going Green Solutions, who did a workshop last year on home energy efficiency that some of you would have participated in. So I thought that was a great thing and thought it was a good thing for to have the community be able to access it on a sort of bigger level, I guess. So Lucinda's going to come up and talk about that. Donald is going to talk about the Beechworth hub, the Beechworth Community Hub. And so we're looking forward to that. And also Jenny Indian is talking about how you can use plants and trees to help to cool and warm your home. And an architect builder called Tim Smith, some of you might know Tim. He lives in Chiltern and he specialises in energy efficient housing. So Tim is going to come and talk about that. We'll have somebody talking about heat pumps, and we've got to finalise that. But anyway, so it's sort of an event to give people some ideas about how they can increase their energy efficiency in their home or in their small business, how they can increase their comfort and reduce carbon emissions at the same time. So that's on the 29th of April. It's a Saturday, and it's from 1 o'clock till 5 o'clock at the Quercus Hall in Beechworth, which is the neighbourhood house. So yeah. And the other thing TRB has been doing is engaging with Indigo Power on looking at a community battery for Beechworth, and we looked at the Barmutha Park sporting complex with Dana, just seeing how that would work as a site to generate solar power and have a battery. So anyway, that's all I've got to say. Thank you. I hope you were able to hear it.
Good. Thanks, Peter. No, that was perfect. So we've got a note here from Catherine from Shazza about a recent Electrify Everything Expo that they ran. And thank you, Catherine. If you could share some information about that, we'll circulate with the newsletter that comes out after the meeting. And then Jill, a note as well about Eco Portal, about using that to promote events and that sort of thing, which you may be aware of is a really good way to reach the sustainability community here in the border region. So if you haven't got plans to do that, get in touch with Jill and she can help there.
Right.
So we'll move now to Jeff for a progress update from
Thank you.
team.
Oh, hi everyone. Jeff Moran here. I'm standing in for Jim Billings, who's unable to attend today's meeting. But from the last meeting, I think that we had with you guys, and Jim reported on that to us. We've been following fairly carefully our strategic plan, which we had funded by Indigo Power to look at how we best go about achieving renewable energy programs in Avenel. We formed a group called RAE, Renewable Avenel Energy, and that's supported initially by a group which was called APRE, Avenel Pilot Program for Renewable Energy, which we had a benefactor give us $100,000 to put solar and battery onto roofs, or just solar if necessary, onto roofs of as many homes in Avenel as we can. On the basis, like Dennis, we looked at low socioeconomic people who might benefit from this sort of program, and that's now completed. We've expended the $100,000 in supplying solar and battery programs, things for Avenel, rooftops in the rooftops for Avenel, and we've now had advice from the people who donated that money that the repayments of that money we can reinvest back into that bank account and provide for future programs, and also more renewable and battery in Avenel. So that's a very generous offer from the original donor. That money is being repaid, and it can be used to supplement our programs in renewable energy in Avenel. And so we're very fortunate to have that benefactor do that. The program, or the thing that we're working on at the moment, is to go through the main dot points that came out of the strategic plan, which was to get our house in order. And that means by incorporating and then doing the necessary research that we have to do in order to find out exactly what energy is coming into Avenel, what's being produced by solar, what's being used by battery, and what's going out of Avenel. So we can then work out what we actually need in terms of whether it's a microgrids or whether it's community batteries, or whether we have a solar farm or something else that we look at down the track for Avenel. So we're at that stage where we're just getting all the dot points and house in order things that were mentioned in our strategic plan. And we've been looking at, we've been in contact with AusNet,
and they now provide data free of charge to community groups for where it used to be you had to pay for it, and they've been very helpful in that process. And we're looking at they have got a document which is a guide to achieving your community renewable energy ambitions. A very, very good document. If you haven't got it, it's available through AusNet, and it means that it gives you a very comprehensive guide and a journey, a sort of 5 or 6 dot points with a very detailed sort of outline of where you start and how you achieve your goals of ultimately having a microgrid or a community battery in your town, and that's through AusNet. That's a worthwhile thing to have. And we have also been on the process of looking at what's next in terms of a feasibility study and how we go about getting a feasibility study done. Who does them? What sort of costs are we going to be up for? And we've been looking at a number of different ways to go about that through the Monash University Net Zero Initiatives programs, through interactions with AusNet. And so that's basically where we're at the moment in Avenel. We're sort of trying to get our house in order so that we can cover all the dot points, I suppose, before we get to a stage where we can, in a stage where we need to apply for funding for whatever we decide is appropriate for Avenel.
Fantastic. So that captures the updates from community energy groups. So I'll open it up now for any questions to any of the speakers today, if you want to pick up any of those conversations and move them forward, because we do still have a few moments before the Net Zero Initiative team arrives. So any questions or comments on any of the presentations? And they were, I'm always or increasingly impressed, I have to say, about the work that's happening out there.
One little thing from me. Could I have Jeff from Seymour's email or his telephone number? Could I like to get in touch with him?
Certainly. Well, yeah, Jeff is our secretary, so he would be, yeah.
Are you able, Jeff, to pop in the chat function there, pop your email address there for Brian?
Yeah.
If you're able to do that.
It's JL Wilmot, WILMOT. Say JL Wilmot, WILMOT at activate, ACTIV number 8, no E, .net.au. .net.au. Just check that out with me again, Jeff, because besides getting stupid, I'm getting old. So it's JLWILMOT at activate.net.au. Correct. Have I got that right? Yeah, that's right.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Good man. Thanks, Jeff.
Ryan.
I'd like to have a chat with you sometime. Cheers. Bye.
Anyone else?
I just had a question about how
Catherine.
you actually secured the $100,000 donation to do the low-income housing upgrades.
One for you, Jeff.
You've got to unmute, Jeff.
Unmute, yeah.
Okay. We had a very generous benefactor that was involved in our program that was committed to renewable energy. He was unfortunately he's died, but his widow is still very, very supportive of the program, and she advised us that any proceeds which were originally to go back into a bank account and be repaid over 10 years, she advised us that we can now keep the repayments and use that to promote the program into the future. So it was a very generous donation by a lovely man in Avenel.
Oh, great.
Do you want to, Rob, make a comment there about fundraising. I mean, it seems to me a lot of the intention of the foundation is to step in and support with that effort. So it's not, 30 different efforts happening scattergun across the across Australia, but more of a systematic approach.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. So a little bit of context for you guys. One of the reasons we were encouraged by Indigo Power to set up the foundation was actually to give access to philanthropic gifting. There are people out there who have significant amounts of money, and they're happy to contribute to causes they believe in and to communities they believe in, which that sounds like what happened at Avenel. But one of the big risks for someone donating, and also for a small group to receive that money, is the burden, the governance burden it places on you over time to maintain that faith with the original donor, and the requirements of equity and transparency and just acquittal of those funds. And the idea, one of the functions we see for the foundation over time is actually to be able to receive those funds, to do the governance work associated with them, and have, through being a little bit larger than an individual community group, have the resources to provide security to the donors over time. Now, we haven't set up a program yet for receiving that sort of funds, but we certainly expect in time to have that capacity for the benefit of people such as yourselves. So I think that that partly outlines our role, or what we see one of our roles becoming.
Thanks, Rob. Dennis, to you.
Jeff, when you've loaned this money to the householders, what sort of security do you have, or what sort of legal documents do you have over the amount you gave them? You're on mute.
We had a contract drawn up, and the contract is fairly detailed in terms of the obligations the receiver of the money has to do, and things like if they sell the house before the 10 years is up, the repayment of the loan becomes for out of the sale proceeds of the house before any other things are paid for, etc. So there is a contract that they sign. It's been going now for about, it's been in operation for about 12 months, and we've, as I said, the last loan that the last loan was just given out this week, and that completes the use of the $100,000, and now the repayments that come back in just keep coming back in and supplement the bank account, and we get able to use those funds for any renewable energy projects in Avenel that we see fit from now on. And that's a committee decides that. So there is a contract that people have to sign and an obligation to meet their quarterly repayments of $250 a quarter. And that's over 10 years. It gives them basically $10,000 over 10 years they have to repay.
Yep. Yeah. Jeff, I've put my details in the chat there. Could you and I have a chat, please, in the next few days?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so a new connection there. I think we're still waiting, and they're not actually scheduled till for another 10 minutes or so, but waiting for Priya from the Monash Net Zero initiative team. So we can go around with any more questions or comments anyone has. Is there any more out there?
Just one, Ben, from us in the Kiwa Valley. We get the actual contract has been let. That is, there's been a successful tenderer for making our stadium into a community safer place. I think they're calling them nowadays. They used to call them place of last resort a couple of years ago, and I don't quite know why they changed the title, although perhaps the wording is important. I don't know. But it's for 23 kilowatts of power on the roof and a battery that can last for 3 days and connection with a large generator, 3-phase power. And that was the scope of the project, for which we obtained bit over $200,000 from the Victorian the Bushfire Relief Group. And as I say, the contract's now been let, so we're looking forward to actual action. What we were trying to do as well in the meantime, because it's also a sports complex and therefore it's connected to a swimming pool, we were trying to get the Shire, and of course the Shire were quite happy to be involved in this, for the power on the stadium to be also used to heat the pool, which is right next to it. And I'll just point out here that the sort of things that can happen to stymie that kind of thing is that, for instance, in this instance, there were 2 power boxes. And because there were 2 power boxes, you can't automatically connect one to the other without dealing with AusNet and people like that. So it couldn't be done immediately. We're still hoping it can be done, because it will be an obvious saving for the Shire and everybody else. And I'm quite sure the Shire will be keen to do it. So we're still negotiating with that.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've had here's prayer now.
Any reports been from DECA? I still can't get used to. I'm still referring to it as Del Whip, but took me 5 years to learn to say that. Now I've got to manage DECA. So
DECA is Del Whip.
Quick one from you, Jill, maybe, if you've got
Yeah, hi. I'm still getting used to the acronym too. Myself and my colleague Araya were here at the meeting today representing DECA. Araya just had to leave. I used to be part of this group a few years ago with a different hat on. So it's good to see some familiar faces and all the growth that's happening in this sector. I'm here in a slightly different role. I started last week as a volunteering coordinator for the Hume region. So I'm trying to connect with environment and sustainability volunteer groups to see what's going well, what support's needed, what help you need, and make connections and try and streamline things if we can. We have some funding available for some particular focus areas at the moment, which is about sustaining existing volunteers, building the capabilities of existing volunteers and attracting new volunteers, particularly youth and multicultural communities. That's my update. In terms of Araya's team and more the climate ready Hume space of DECA, there's been some staff changes there. Many of you might know Daniel Cocking and Chelsea Cherry. They've just moved on to new roles. So Araya's still in the team, and there'll be a new manager of that program next week who'll be familiar to many of you who will come along. Yeah, that's really it, unless there's anything anyone wants to ask, or please connect with me outside of the meeting.
Great.
Thanks.
So last opportunity now, quickly before we throw to the Monash team, but I wanted to say as well, Catherine, to you.
Yeah, just a very quick one, and I'm happy to share it with the group. In November, we had a Eurobodalla heatwave and bushfire haven strategy finalised. It has complete business cases for 20 more additional heatwave havens. We've got 5 that we've done so far, 7 in council facilities and 13 in community-owned facilities. So very happy to pass that on to you, Ben, to pass out to the group. The key thing I would say to anyone who is doing a refuge or a haven, make sure you have HEPA filters, because the key thing that's killing people is the wood smoke.
So you need temperature control for the heat and HEPA filters for air quality.
Good. Okay. Well, if you're, Karina, you may be able to make a note that we share that document with the team, or a link to that document as a part of a newsletter. That'd be fantastic. So every meeting we put out a call for anyone who wants to make a short presentation, give a short update. So you're very welcome when that call goes out, or even ahead of time if you've got something you'd like to present to the group. Really encouraged to come forward and give a little 5-10 minute update to the group. And the alternative is we send out a newsletter after this, which captures a lot of the notes from the meeting. If you want to just submit something for that newsletter, that's another thing you can do. So encourage you to do those two things. So I saw Priya join a moment ago. So I'm going to hand over to you, Priya, for the next little while to give us an update on or a presentation about the work you've been working on.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. Hope you're all keeping well. So yeah, as Ben mentioned, my name's Priya. Priya Galkatia. I'm the project lead with Monash University on a project we're currently carrying out called Active Energy Precincts. We've got some of the team joining us as well. We've got Amy Grigorovich, who's the Energy Resilience Officer at Yarra Ranges, and we've got Birgit Schoenefinger, who's also on the call. They form part of our engagement team. So I've got a bit of a presentation to take you through, but feel free to put up your hand and ask questions as we go if you'd like. Let me just try and share my screen, and Ben, maybe you could just let me know if everything's working all right or coming through okay.
There you go, you're on.
I'm on, great.
Yeah.
All right, so thought it'd be interesting to hear a bit about the project and what we're doing. Sorry, can you hear me still?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I'm just getting a Zoom error on my screen, that's all. So I'll ignore that, and if you can hear me. Yeah, we're exploring how microgrid systems can benefit communities, and by delivering sort of around 3 areas, mainly around community level resilience. And what we mean by that, and I caught a tail end of some of the conversation there, I think you'd be well across some of this, is around, I guess, the ability to provide some energy supply over multiple days in a recovery period after a major event, such as a bushfire or a storm. Driving down emissions and enabling communities to progress in their net zero journey. And of course, energy costs is always in the mix when we talk about these sort of projects. So we're really looking at how we can minimize energy costs using these systems. I guess a couple of things the project is, not doing. One is we're not looking to turn, whole towns or communities into microgrids or islandable off-grid sort of systems. What we're really looking to show is the benefit of, an aggregated solution for people to consider, as opposed to that individual approach that they might be considering for their own home or business. In terms of the project activities, we're active in 3 areas in Victoria, as you can see on this image. So we're working down in Surf Coast Shire, in Wodonga, and in Yarra Ranges. So in each of these regions, we've identified 2 precincts that we're looking at, which is essentially 2 communities. And for each of those communities, we're looking at delivering a feasibility study that will sort of involve implementation options for them. So things like the concept designs that would be involved, the business case that would support each of those designs, and also the participation options for the different kinds of users. So that's essentially, the more contractual side of the system. So the process that we followed in the project, one thing the project I guess, felt was very important was that a feasibility study be based around a community-led solution. And by that, we mean one that's not based on, I guess, a technical driver or what we've seen quite often is a network driver, sort of addressing network issues or technical issues that could address network capability, and really more understanding what a community might want from an energy system and how a system could be designed to deliver that. So the process we followed to do that in the project, we worked very closely with the council partners in each of the region and the local energy groups. So obviously similar to a lot of you on the call, we worked with the local energy groups in each of those regions to sort of start identifying which precincts or communities could really benefit from a microgrid-like system being deployed. And from that allowed the stakeholder engagement team to start having those conversations with some of the larger energy users and what we consider key stakeholders in each of those precincts, and also start collecting data from the community. Data collection is a big part of all of these feasibility studies and plays a pretty critical role, I guess, in enabling the output. So that sort of commenced very early on in the project. So that allowed, I guess, some of those concept designs that we're now considering in a more final form at this stage of the project to start developing. And then also it allowed us to identify sites where we could start looking at equipment deployment, so things like battery and monitoring equipment. And I guess the next stage here, stage 4 in this graphic, I think pretty key for us. We felt understanding community preferences was really important for each community, but also identifying, I guess, the kind of information that each community might need to be able to provide input into the feasibility study. Obviously, each community is unique, has their own circumstances, and also, I mean, everybody's got a different understanding of the energy topic, which can be quite complicated at times. So we tried to tease out what we could deliver to the different communities that might help them understand what we're doing. So to do that, the engagement team pulled together some focus groups to start teasing some of that information out in a more sort of one-on-one format. And that led to some community workshops being held late last year in each of those precincts. And that allowed us to start having those sort of one-on-one conversations with the community about what we're doing, and also to try and understand, I guess, some of the priorities and preferences that people face. But also, I guess, critically from the output perspective is understanding some of the things that might be considered hurdles for people to sort of participate in a system like we're discussing. And so that in the project sort of then leads to sort of piloting those systems and the reporting, which we're sort of currently getting into, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So we sort of looked at a hub and spoke approach. And sorry, Ben, you might just need to yell out to me if anyone's got questions, because Zoom's sort of playing up for me a little bit. Apologies. So yeah, as I was saying, we've adopted a hub and spoke approach in the project. And what we mean by that is we're looking at taking, I guess, some of those functions in your energy network, such as generation and the end consumer, and then co-locating those functions in a central location, which we're calling the hub. And the hub, ideally, we try and base a hub in our project around larger energy users. The main reason for that is the larger the energy profile and the variation in that energy profile, the larger the assets that could be housed in that hub, which then leads to, I guess, the benefit for more benefits rather for the rest of the community. And the spokes in this model is essentially the other users in the community outside the hub. So that could be, your your residences, other sort of commercial properties or small businesses, or even a group of residences, and they could be connected directly in terms of a network connection close to that hub, or virtually. And I guess the makeup of that is really dependent on each community. It really depends on what's happening in that community and what they're trying to achieve. But I guess the key thing we felt with this approach is that it allowed the ability to scale up once an initial deployment is in place, but also then you could repeat this in other communities, which we're hoping to be the case. So I've got a small example of this here. So we've got a community hub here, which comprises of some community buildings. So that could be something like a library or some sports ground. We've also got in the mix here a commercial building, which could be something like a supermarket. And then behind the meter assets, such as obviously your solar generation, storage assets that could be spread across each of those sites, as well as, I guess, becoming more and more prevalent is EV charging that will come into the mix. And then that would be considered a community hub in this case. And we'd look, the reason we'd consider this to be a community hub, I guess, is it provides, I guess, a staging area for some of those resilience activities, provides a staging area where people could come to charge their phones or access services such as showers, or if a supermarket was in the mix, access groceries and the like. And then, as I mentioned before, the spokes are the different kinds of users in the community that are participating in the system. And our project also looks at, I guess, other front of the meter assets, such as, a solar farm, or any assets that might already exist, or I guess critically any assets that might come into the time horizon that the project needs to consider. And that's, with systems such as this, about a 5 or 10 year sort of time horizon that we need to consider. And with that, there's different, I guess, modes of operations for the systems we're considering. Normal operation, and this is really focused around the hub operations. You've got your normal operations, and that's really about, I guess, optimizing the energy use at that hub location, which, as I mentioned, could have a number of different sort of users in it, with the intention that because they're the large energy users in that community, driving down or optimizing their energy use also drives down their emissions across that whole community in its entirety. And then as a result, once you start bringing in other aspects of the energy market into play, it can enable the costs for participants to be driven down as well. And so there's different options you can see, or different considerations that we look at for the normal operation of a hub. And then in the resilience operation, this is where you've had a significant event, whether it be a bushfire or a significant storm that's resulted in network-wide outages for the community. And we're looking at the ability for these hubs to potentially island in that situation and operate in an islanded format very specifically during that resilience period to allow critical loads to be supplied from the on-site solar and storage, and then provide the access to those facilities that I mentioned for the rest of the community. So it becomes a real staging area for the rest of the community during that period. And then for the rest of the users, we've sort of looked at how people can participate, and we've sort of developed this matrix, trying to keep things as simple as possible for people to try and understand how they could participate. And we've developed, I guess, 4 different levels, and it's really dependent on what you have on your property. And level 1 would be someone with, sorry, I should say we've developed 4 levels, and it really depends on the amount of solar and the amount of control you're willing to consider if you were participating in the kind of system that we are outlining. So to give you an example of what these levels mean, a level 1 user might be someone who doesn't have any solar on their property, or they might rent and can't get access to solar. So they're really looking to get access to green energy. So this, being involved in a system that we're sort of outlining allows them the opportunity to access renewable energy that's generated locally within the community. A level 2 user is someone who might have solar, is looking for a better feed-in tariff, or they might be curtailed due to network issues. And then being involved in the system gives them access to potentially better options on both their feed-in tariff and storage options. A level 3 user is really an advanced version of level 1. It's someone who might not have any renewable or storage capacity on their property, but they're willing to enable or consider a level of control, like, so for example, controlling their air conditioning or cooling on their property in exchange for access to lower energy costs. And then a level 4 user, similarly to level 3, is a level 2 that is willing to consider that level of control of their equipment on their facilities, on their property, so including the solar and storage that they might have. And then really they would engage in the system through a contractual method, and it's really a version of an energy retail contract. And that's how we've been sort of discussing it with the communities to try and keep it as, I guess, tangible as possible for them. Something we've discussed in these workshops that was, I guess, quite a talking point for people was, I guess, the different roles that people can play within the system. And there's, I guess, many ways you can skin the cat, many variations on business models and ownership structures, and where individuals and communities fit into that, and where third parties can support or deliver some of those services or functions. And I guess without getting into too much detail, happy to answer some questions, but I guess the key thing that we wanted to sort of get across is that the level of involvement or the roles that community and third parties play within a system such as this is really dependent on the risk appetite. And there's a real, I guess, need for support in some areas for communities to understand, I guess, some of the risks that they'll be facing as they go through this process. But yeah, happy to sort of field any questions around that as we go through it. And I guess one of the things, obviously community engagement was very critical through this project, and I'm going to throw over to Amy so to talk through some of the activities that we had throughout this project, and also, I guess, a perspective from Yarra Ranges Council and as an engagement officer.
Cool, thanks Priya. Hi everybody. Apologies if it's a bit noisy. The office is insanely busy today, so I'm tucked in a little corner. But as Priya said, I'm the Energy Resilience Officer for Yarra Ranges Council. So I work in the climate action team, and we've been fortunate enough to be one of the council areas working on the Active Energy Precinct project with Monash University. And I act as the local community engagement officer on the project for the Yarra Ranges. And Birgit, who's online, give us a wave, is the engagement officer for Wodonga as an independent consultant. And then we have Karen Weaver, who I'm not sure if she's online, for Surf Coast. So there's been, I should highlight from the onset that having the three of us on the ground in our local communities has been a really great asset. We're very thankful that the project had funding to pay for our time to be able to have locals having the discussions with our communities about how this project would roll out and the priorities and needs and kind of what everyone would like to see as an outcome. There's been all sorts of kind of collaboration with different stakeholders throughout the project duration. So like Priya said, there's been a couple of different things for different stages. So we had a survey that went out that was targeting residents and small business owners. We've done webinars, which was targeting public funders. We've had numerous one-on-one meetings with different stakeholders, answering all of the complex questions around microgrids. We've done some council briefings, trying to get local government on board, attended community events, and then late last year we did some significant workshops in each of the microgrid study towns, where the project team went around and asked questions about what the community would like to see from a kind of commercial and operational model for a microgrid. And all of that input from all of the different collaboration opportunities has been informing the modelling and the work that Monash University and Birdwood Energy are currently doing to get these feasibility studies to come to fruition. So the community have helped identify those hub and spoke locations like Priya was talking about. They've helped us understand the priorities around net zero and cost and resilience, and how we could implement a microgrid. And then most importantly, it's been a really great opportunity for the project to be community-led in helping us work out how the benefits of a microgrid, those commercial benefits, could be shared among the community, and how community groups could be involved in like the leadership and ownership of a microgrid, which is exciting. So we're keen to see how that kind of comes to fruition as the study progresses. If you go to the next slide, Priya. Thank you. So I've included a bit of thought here about how the project has come kind of along the timeline in the Yarra Ranges, noting that the experience in each of the study towns and also each of the local government areas has been vastly different. Again, highlighting how important it is to have locals on the ground and working very closely with community members. Yeah, the outcomes have been really interesting, and I think we'll be better off in the end having 6 feasibility studies at the end that reflect really different communities and local contexts. So I'm excited for that. But I wanted to give you a snapshot of some of the community groups that have been involved in our projects for Hillsville and Yarra Junction in the Yarra Ranges. So collaborators have included like your community energy groups, like many of you are from, RSLs, our sporting clubs, places like Beechworth Bakery and some of our larger industrial breweries and things like that in town who have got a bit of a commercial lens. We've got some aged care facilities, places that manage our shopping centres, libraries, kind of all of the above. So that's been really interesting, like pulling out the priorities for each of those different groups. And for the Yarra Ranges, it's really shown our number one priority is energy resilience. And I think that truly reflects some of the extreme weather that we've unfortunately had in previous years. I looked back at my stats, and in 2021, we had some major storm events that came through, and we had 3,000 residents without power for a month. So our locals are very concerned about how we can have community energy solutions that help them kind of mitigate the impacts of extreme weather events and the power outages that are associated with them. So our priority is resilience, and our microgrid models reflect that. But it's been a really great project to be a part of, and as a council we've learnt an immense amount just through the process and learning what's possible. We're still working out what the role of local government in the implementation of microgrids could be, and whether or not that's appropriate for our communities, and also the capacity of our community groups to take leadership and step up into these positions to help us implement, and what we can do as council to support that. I'm sure Priya will touch on it, but there's been some very key lessons learned around what exemptions you need to be able to implement a microgrid, the challenges with working with energy distributors and getting things approved, and then also just the joys of engaging with very busy people doing all sorts of different things during their daily lives. But we're very excited to see how the project progresses, and the microgrid work and our collaboration with Monash Uni, and then also the other council areas and the community engagement officers, has very much informed a lot of the projects we're also working on at the moment. So we've just started another microgrid feasibility study in another township in Monbulk. We're working on our energy transition plan, which the microgrids are an example of how that could support council getting off fossil fuels. we're working on improving specific buildings when it comes to energy resilience and putting solar and battery on, so that if they were to be connected to a microgrid, they're kind of ready to go. And then all of that is also coming together in discussions with our emergency management team to work out how we could activate these hubs during times of need as emergency relief centres. So yeah, that's kind of a summary of what we've been up to. I think that was all from me. If I hand back to Priya.
Thanks, Amy. As Amy mentioned, I guess we thought obviously insights from the process we've gone through so far would be of interest, and some of the things I think we wanted to highlight, and some of this stuff might seem obvious, but that ground up community consultation and I guess having Amy and the team on the ground has been really critical, and I think a great advantage in this project, having the resources there on the ground, and I guess also importantly that local context, and it allowed us to get some of these understandings through those engagements. So like I guess that from the community side of things, that some of the preferences and how they differ within each community, and as Amy outlined, for Yarra Ranges, resilience was a key component. I guess one of the things we found is that regardless of that preference or priority, there was the willingness within the participants that we engaged to maintain their energy costs, or potentially even pay additional sort of costs for their energy in return for that community benefit, which I think we found heartening. Also, that I guess there was a drive to have agency in the system operation. So in terms of the governance side of things, having a say in how the system is managed and how the community can take it forward was very strong from the workshops that we had. From the project perspective as well, I mentioned data is critical. One of the things we found, we spent a lot of time with equipment issues, and COVID obviously hit supply chains, and I'm sure Ben can talk to that as well. Supply chain issues have been hitting everybody in most industries. And I guess from a feasibility perspective, prioritizing, I guess, access to historic data and other sort of soft options, such as like APIs and the like, where you can get information through existing services, is probably a real way of going forward and trying to prioritize that, as opposed to sort of installing equipment to get some of that data out. We also conducted a microgrid technology review. The report will be coming out shortly, and it'll be publicly available. But I guess that was to sort of canvass the market and try and, I guess, outline for people, I guess, the different functions and the vendors that are available for them, and the kind of questions that people need to consider. And one of the, I guess, the key things to come out of it is that technology is still pretty early, like embryonic is the word I've put in there, and used by the person we got involved. And I think that's really key to understand, that the technology is going to be improving, changing, and offering new options to the end consumer. And I guess the key thing is to not lock yourselves in, and make sure that functionality and the contracts associated with it are appropriate for your community or your needs as an individual. And I'm sure everybody is probably familiar with, I guess, the pains with getting information out of the networks, which we unfortunately were no different. So network data and that connection process for DERs still haven't really caught up with what the market is requesting. And so I guess the key thing is to allow a significant amount of time if you're undergoing this journey, which I think a lot of the team can attest to, especially Amy being part of Yarra Ranges Council. We're had faced lengthy delays from the network side of things. Key things from some of the modelling and the systems we're considering, I guess, is that we're looking at behind the meter installations for these assets, and how that can be leveraged. and there's network benefits that could be derived from this. But I guess the key thing, again, similar to the above point about getting data and information out of networks, it's really a slow process to get them on board on some of that, the services that they could gain from systems such as this that a community could implement. So any sort of benefits should really be treated as supplementary from a revenue perspective. You shouldn't really, I guess, systems shouldn't be considering those revenue streams as core to the business case. And another thing, I guess, energy is a very complex beast, and these kind of feasibility studies are no different. And that was one thing that we obviously tried to address through a lot of the engagements that the team conducted with the community. But there's still a lot of, I guess, risk involved in these projects. And I think risk management is a key thing for communities to understand and ensure that they have the support that they need. And as Amy touched on, like the Yarra Ranges Council, considering how what their role is in these kind of projects going forward, I think there's the potential for local government and other authorities to really assist communities who are taking the initiative and undergoing this journey, and get the support and some of the assistance they need to sort of supplement their skills. And I've just put on here timeline. So the project timeline is approximately 18 months, where we're coming to the end of that. So a lot of the information will be available in publicly in May this year. But the key thing, I guess, is that it's not a fast process. It does take a lot of time, especially as Amy alluded to, finding time with busy people, and with as a lot of yourselves can attest to, community energy groups. A lot of it is voluntary work, and finding and coordinating everybody does take a lot of time. So making sure that people factor that in to their sort of expectations is critical. And also just the time to actually do the work. There's always things that need to be taken into account. So I thought that is a key point for consideration. And that was mainly it about the project. I also thought a question we get a lot is, why is Monash doing this? Why Monash? Why are we involved, I guess, in a project such as this? And I just thought I'd put a bit of information about what Monash University's done in this space, just to give you some context on our background. So Monash sort of started the net zero journey back in 2017 and committed to reaching net zero by 2030 back then, and allocated around $130 million worth of funding for that initiative out to 2030. And in that time, I guess this is some progress that's been made. Just to give you an idea of, I guess, some of the work that's happened out at Monash. And for those that don't know, I guess Monash, in particular the Clayton campus, is quite a large campus. We have about 18 megawatts of energy use. And a lot of work has been done in making buildings digital ready. And what we mean by that is a lot of work's been done in the background of building automation systems and how the data is managed to enable them to integrate easily with different systems. We've had sort of AI managed systems running and tested or piloted, I should say, recently. We had a microgrid project that was an ARENA project, which is the federal government's renewable agency that we completed a couple of years ago, which sort of took a third of our campus and enabled a microgrid system on it. And a lot of the, I guess, learnings and pains we gained from that journey is what we're trying to sort of translate for the community through this project in the active energy precincts. So in terms of assets, we've got about 4 megawatts of on-site solar. We've got a megawatt hour of energy storage. And we have also have I guess, access to a remote in front of the meter wind farm with 30 megawatts of generation. And we also have EV chargers across our campuses, but I guess critically in that space, we've piloted controlling those charges so that if we need to, we can wind back charging. And then on the other side, obviously, we're moving towards transitioning away from natural gas and the like for heating. So there's a lot happening at Monash, and hence why we're sort of involved. That's it. So happy to take questions, but also happy to share this presentation with you as well, so I can send it through to Ben to circulate. See, there's a
Dennis, was that you for a question, or is your hand still up from something else?
No, it's me for a question.
Yep, Dennis.
Bria, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. Really great stuff. In everything you're talking about is behind the meter.
Yes.
And I'm reflecting, if you like, on the federal government has aimed to put out 400 batteries, community batteries, and it's looking dangerously like quite a few of those are going to go in front of the meter, and really because there's a rush to get these batteries out. But as communities, we're going to miss out badly if that happens. So, it's great to see that you guys are coming out with the evidence too, or the thinking that all of these assets should be behind the meter, because I think we've got to promote this across the whole of our network, that it's behind the meter batteries which are going to be doing the work for us. We want them on community assets and keeping the power and the money in the community. Full stop.
Yeah, I mean, as Ben can attest to, we've had a couple of those community batteries pop up. I guess then the application process pop up in the areas we're working in, and I guess the takeaway for us is that communities need to ensure that there's some level of community benefit maintained out of these batteries for them, because there's, as you outlined, Dennis, I think there's an unfortunate risk that might not be the case. So and I think that needs to be pushed as hard as possible.
Thank you.
Mike, you've got a question too?
Yeah, thank you. Good work, all. It's good to see all the action there. I've got a special question for Amy from Yarra Ranges Council. Being an ex-councillor there a little while ago, I'm interested to know how the large-scale solar rollout's happening on the waste dumps in Yarra Ranges, if that's still happening. I'm sorry if I missed that.
No, all good, Mike. So we had a feasibility study done for a solar farm on our waste treatment centre back in 2019, and council wasn't ready for it back then. We've just had another consultant re-look at that, and that involves a large battery as well. So that hasn't been taken up to ELT or council yet to see if we can progress with that, but internally it seems like there's a lot of interest in it, and we'd be very keen to see how that could incorporate into our microgrid studies. They're very nicely placed geographically. So the slide Priya had with, there was a box there that I think you changed. It used to say solar farms, but to something else. That's our kind of thinking on how the bigger picture could all fit together. So yes, still in the works.
Is the feasibility stacking up still?
Yeah, yep, it's there. Yep, definitely.
Good.
Yeah.
Good luck with all that.
Thank you.
All the best.
Any more questions of Priya and the team? Or else, I'm sure we've got a few here, but we don't want to go down too many rabbit holes. Any more from the members of the network? Dennis, you got another question?
I have for Amy. Amy, in terms of this, the solar installation you're putting on that Mike just talked about, you said you're now looking at adding a battery. That change the economics of the proposal greatly?
Yeah, so we had a couple of scenarios modelled, and some of them are just solar, some of them are solar and battery, and then some of them are solar, battery, EV chargers, and being able to island the system if it's connected up to a recreational reserve. So the scenarios that look at that resilience factor, and having a large battery that can help with emergency services and things like that when the power goes out is looking a lot more, yeah, there's appetite for it, I would say, whereas that kind of just basic level solar farm, the financials aren't there for it, for council to invest. But yeah, yet to take it up the ranks to see what yeah, our councillors think so far.
Amy, are you looking at the impact of destination EV charges on any of these batteries over time? Because it's just some brief numbers I've been looking at seem to change the economics of a battery enormously if you've got some destination charges there.
Yes, yep, exactly right, Dennis. It's definitely part of the mix. Yep.
Thank you.
To you, Rob.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Question for you, Birgit. What's the focus in Wodonga? What's the state of play up there?
Well, yeah, we're all at the same stage of working through the feasibility study, and the community input that we had was really focused on some people's interest to get on board in order to reduce their costs, but mostly it was resilience as well. So.
And I'll just add to what Birgit said there, that there was also, I guess, less because of the more urban sort of environment that is Wodonga. There was also, I guess, that reliability focus from an economic perspective for some of the precincts we're looking at and the commercial impact on outages and reliability. We had lots of, I guess, businesses come that they're investing in solar, for example, but they still need that diesel generation backup to ensure there's no interruption to their services and how they could avoid that. So trying to address some of those questions in Wodonga.
Yeah.
Thanks, Priya. Thanks, Birgit.
Phil?
Thanks. Yeah, Phil Shorten from Shazza, which is a community group on the far south coast in New South Wales. We're working on some feasibility study for microgrids across 8 communities. I just heard quite a few people references today that cost is a key driver, and that's certainly what we've understood, one of 4 key drivers that we've identified. And I was just wondering if anyone's put together, particularly maybe Priya or perhaps anyone at Indigo, whether you've looked at sort of hypothetical business case, if you like, from the electricity consumer's perspective. So in other words, the scenarios that we're hearing a lot about is coming from the community is, yep, we're happy with the battery, yep, we might be keen on a little solar farm somewhere. How can we get a little bit of extra money for feed-in? And how can people in our community get access to cheaper kilowatt rate, particularly if it's locally generated power that's stored in a community battery? So I'm just wondering if anyone's done a sort of a financial hypothetical on what that might look like, even if the regulations don't allow for it.
I can go first, Ben, if you want to.
You have a go, Priya.
Yeah.
The
short answer is yes. We're doing that at the moment. However, Phil, I guess some of the things we're looking at probably might be specific to Victoria, because there's a few exemption avenues that we're exploring that might enable some of that, I guess, access to lower tariffs for local users in a localized energy system, such as one we're considering that currently, I think my understanding is it's currently only available in Victoria. So we're looking at that, how could that work where the user's only paying for the portion of the network that is in that localized system, because there's a component, let's say 90% of generation is local within that community. They're not paying for that from the generation point way out, wherever the coal-fired generators may be. So that's something we're considering. So we're looking at how those network tariffs, different tariff rates could impact that. Short answer is yes, we're working on it, not yet finished. But some of that information will be available once we've published the feasibility studies in a few months. So yeah, happy to circulate it via Ben, so you know when that's happening.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Priya.
Do you want to go that one, Nick?
Yeah, I guess probably the main thing I'd add, Phil, is really this idea of virtual storage. You know, export solar during the day, import energy back in the evening, and it's as though you had a battery. You know, in terms of your billing experience, it's happening in WA because Western Power are the only retailer and they own the network. ANU explored the concept a lot through their work of going, what if we didn't have to pay network charges for local energy, if you like. Unfortunately, it feels a little bit like, what if I could walk on my hands kind of thing? Well, then I'd be able to walk on my hands. It's like, it's just not a thing really when we talk to the networks about it. So I think it's too theoretical. Ausgrid's doing it at the moment, but when you actually follow the money, you go, where are these payments to these solar customers coming from? They're using the network just like everybody else. Why aren't they paying to use the network? So we're really at a bit of a loss on virtual storage in that, you know, these batteries, this kind of front of meter neighborhood batteries barely stack up on the spot market, and they certainly don't stack up if you have to pay, you know, the feed-in tariff as well, let's say. So we're very skeptical about it. And, you know, if you want to not pay for power in the evening, buy a battery and put it on your house.
I think probably our view of it is a little less local and a little more global. And that's to say, you know, these community energy hubs that we work on, there's probably not a way that we're thinking of really easily, practically doing a net solution. But if you scale for a battery to a group of users, but if you scale out a bit, you can see that in the mix, there's an enormous amount of solar, and perhaps there's an opportunity to discount the solar rate. Perhaps there's an opportunity to capture some of that solar in a battery and have a peak rate that's shorter. We're using the battery or group of batteries to keep the peak rate as short as we can. And basically it's to say, well, let's change the tariff structure a little bit and deliver value sensibly for today, because you know there's still controlled loads and all this sort of stuff that date back to, you know, electricity is cheap in the evenings and you should charge your hot water and these sorts of things. If we're able to sensibly use, as Priya's described, this group of assets in a community to restructure the tariff, not to say, hey, you guys over there get to use this battery and here's your financial benefit, but to say us working together, we've been able to work things out a little bit better, and everyone gets a bit of a reduced power rate in the day, and we've been able to shorten the peak rate as a for instance, then we can return value at more of the level up from virtual net metering. So that's sort of been our focus, and really what that would be, you know, tariff structure as sort of Priya describes, that a retail bill that returns some of that value to customers to a better tariff for everyone rather than just for a group of people. So but still there's a lot of work that happened to get, because it requires restructuring a whole retail business, a whole wholesale, developing a whole wholesale strategy, and so on and so forth. So there's a power of work to be done there to pull that whole tariff together. But that's sort of the way, as a retail provider, that we're looking at it.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the outcomes of our project is of our SURF. We call it SURF. One of the outcomes is to provide information to the regulators about what changes we see as being necessary. So what we're chasing is hypothetical. What we're chasing is, you know, models that might become part of the future landscape. They may not necessarily operate right now.
I think we've got a model, and yeah, maybe we can take it offline and have another chat.
Sure.
Yeah, Rob, question for you.
You're on mute, Rob.
The network distributor basically gets paid by the daily charge, which is on your bill. Plus, I know they've got a markup on the retail, on the the wholesale price of the electricity, and there's quite a few others with markups on those. But so a substantial part of the distribution cost is being paid by that daily charge, I'd imagine. Is that the case?
It probably depends on your usage. Maybe I'll let Priya talk to that. Sorry, it's your presentation, Priya. So.
Oh, no, happy for you to take that one. I mean, I guess it depends on your retail arrangements and so like. I guess what we're looking at, so probably not a direct answer to your question, is we're looking at options, a couple of options where people might elect to stay on their current energy retail agreement, but how can they be involved in a system? So I guess becoming, if they're part of the ownership structure of this community energy group, if that's what was implemented in one community, they would get returns as being a shareholder, which would then, I guess, have it's a direct cost impact on them in terms of revenue. But the other sort of options we're looking at that I alluded to is there's I guess these innovation exemptions for a local energy supply license to be issued by the regulator down here for a system that might show what Phil was alluding to, like systems that don't necessarily I guess operate in current regulations, but would in the future. And I guess they're trying to create sandboxes for that to test new tariff structures and how those, I guess importantly, how those tariffs could flow through from the different participants in that. So, and I think we're seeing that in particular at the moment with some of those community battery initiatives, like how do the different tariffs flow through? If a distributor applies a specific tariff, it's up to whoever's downstream to then pass that on to their user, and how does that work? So I guess those are the sort of things we're teasing out. Probably not a direct answer to your question, Rob, but I think Nick might have more info on that.
Just to keep it really short, I guess, to give you a couple of numbers, Rob, in AusNet's turf where we are, a household or a small business is $125 a year to be connected, is the fee for AusNet, and they charge 20 cents a kilowatt hour for consumption from the grid during peak. So $125 a year, you're going, I don't know, 40 cents a day. So if you draw more than 2 kilowatt hours a day, you're paying more in consumption charges than you are in standing charges to AusNet, that is.
Well, in New South Wales, we're paying up to around, I'm paying about $1.90 per day.
Are you in essential energy?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's basically, because I've got solar on my roof and a battery, I basically don't import much at all, only if the weather's a bit funny. But I mainly export. But the biggest part of my bill is that paying for the grid, which I'm quite happy to do, because without the grid I couldn't export. So, but I was just wondering how it all fits together, because you can produce your solar power for cents a kilowatt hour, then you export them and you get 7 cents or something, and then you buy them back for 35 cents. It just, that's what the consumers are looking at, and they're saying, is there a way, the genuine competition can happen in the retail market, that maybe some of solar contributors or others can get a better deal.
Yeah, no, we'll take that one offline, I think, Rob, because we have to wind it up now, and we'll be talking about that for a long time. There's a lot in that one, so happy even to schedule something for the next meeting if that's useful. But we might wind up now and say a big thanks to Priya and the team for coming along and providing us with that presentation. And if you're able, Priya, to share those slides, we'd like to circulate that to the group.
Yeah, no
and
problems.
when you're publishing information, absolutely send it to me, and we'll make sure that's circulated to this group here, because I think we'd all be interested to see where you get to with your sort of thinking about what's possible, thinking about what needs to change with the regulations to make that possible, and to really push our thinking, you know, on what's possible and what we can do together. So thanks again for your time. Thanks everyone for coming today, and looking forward to seeing you in another 2 months. And the people from New South Wales are very, very, very welcome, Catherine. So yeah, come again.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.